Welcome, everyone. So glad you're here. Um, Welcome to this session of A Little About a Lot and to the longest title ever for A Little About a Lot. You see it there, where we'll be taking up the subject matter of polyvagal theory. So look forward to the discussion. But first, just a little bit of housekeeping, um, some zoominess. Most people are veterans of Zoom by now. Cindy and I are your hosts and Zoom masters for tonight. We're here to help and herd as necessary. Um, should you have problems and need to reach out or need to just send a message to Cindy or me, you can find us in the chat feature and just drop down the list of the participants. You can find either one of us. Should you need to chat without interrupting the conversation, you can do it that way. That can come in handy. You're finding your microphone and video buttons. We also can mute your microphones and video. We don't do that in a rude way. We do that if there's some background noise or, God forbid, something in the background that you don't know is there that it could be offensive. We would shut down the video right quick. Sometimes we shut down the audio just because we're trying to find a noise, and by muting people's microphones, we can find out where the noises come from. Um, we are recording the session, and we can move on. Any questions before we move on? All right. Brandon Cook, our facilitator for tonight. Brandon is a writer, a trainer, a business and personal coach. After graduate school, Brandon moved to Long Beach, California, and had a transformative experience for over 14 years as a pastor, coach, and a trainer. He has worked as a professional storyteller, and you can read some of his writing, poetry, fiction, and nonfiction, at brandonacook.com, also available on Instagram. Brandon is the executive director of the podcast Naming the Real. He's also a CSW associate, and he's a co-founder of this discussion series that we call A Little About a Lot. I can't express how grateful I am for Brandon. We've been on this journey for a bit, a couple of years almost, and outside of that, we are friends and trusted comrades, and I'm very grateful for him in all kinds of ways, but particularly for tonight in this fascinating subject. So over to you, Brandon.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you. You made me feel all warm. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. I'm really glad to be with you. I've been looking forward to this. I'm excited to be with you. There's a lot of things you could be doing on a Thursday night, but here you are to talk about our collective neurobiology and how we navigate the world in our bodies. So I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful that you're here. This is an offering of the Center for Spiritual Wisdom, and yet here we are talking about our polyvagal theory and our neurobiologies. And the reason for that is because all wisdom and ultimately all spirituality is embodied, has to do with being in our bodies. And we won't nerd out too hardcore here, but in the West, there's this classic distinction between body and spirit as if they're two different worlds. And the reality is, and the science and the great spiritual traditions tell us, actually, if you want to live a deeply spiritual life, you got to learn to be in your body. Now, for many of us, being in our bodies and feeling our feelings was not safe. There's all sorts of ways that we had to push our emotions down in order to survive life or not feel all the things that we feel. And so part of growing up or being on a spiritual journey is learning to let yourself experience reality. That's why uh, our organization, my wife and I, it's called Naming the Real. It's about getting back in touch with the reality. And part of that reality is the reality of having physical bodies. I love this topic that we're going to approach tonight. I'm by no means an expert. I do use a lot of polyvagal theory with my clients, which I'll talk a little bit about tonight. I'm a personal coach. I consider it deep soul work. I do work with a lot of executives and high performers, but my passion is not business. It's watching people become who they're meant to be. It's deep soul work. And a lot of the work that I invite people into, or that they find their way into, is befriending their bodies, which again we'll talk about tonight. I'm gonna polyvagal theory. You can kind of nerd out on the scientific terms, and sometimes I get the feedback it's a little too much. I am going to give you some of the science terms, so just in case you're into that kind of multi-syllabic offerings for your notes. But you can also ignore that and just get the basic gist of it, and that's plenty. So I'd like to start with a question for you to consider. You can even write your answer down if you have a journal, or you can just answer it in your own being. I want to ask you to consider, where and when do you feel safest and most alive in your being and in your body? Where and when do you feel safest and most alive in your being and in your body? Maybe it's a time of day. Maybe it's a place. For me, the forest. Anytime I'm in green space, something happens for me that I don't know how to describe it, but I can feel it happen in my body. So where is that for you? Where and when do you feel most alive and safest in your being and your body? Take a few moments just to consider that. Maybe it's being in your garden, witnessing a beautiful sunrise. And then consider this. What in life gets you most out of a feeling of safety and aliveness? What gets you away from a feeling of safety or aliveness? Maybe it's having to have a difficult conversation. Maybe it's when your calendar just has too many items to attend to. But what throws you out of a feeling of safety and aliveness? Now, as you can probably guess, even if you're not familiar with polyvagal theory, you can probably already surmise that it has to do with how we live in our bodies in a way that leads to safety and a feeling of like really experiencing life and being alive. And it also has to do with ways where we lose that feeling of safety and aliveness. We're going to use one guiding image tonight, which is called the polyvagal ladder. And I'll explain these terms in a moment. But Terry's going to put this image up. It's called the polyvagal ladder. I got this specific version of it from a somatic practitioner called Sarah Jackson, whose work I enjoy. It's coming, it's coming. Here we go. All right, so this is the polyvagal ladder. Just take a moment to check out our stick figure in various states of being. All right, the polyvagal ladder has to do with how our body regulates itself and how we manage, how we experience safety and beauty, and how we manage threats. So you can see this person having a wonderful time at the top of the ladder. They're in a place of safety. I feel safe, confident, and connected. This is called, here's the science nerdiness. This is called a ventral vagal state. We call polyvagal, the idea behind polyvagal theory is that we have a vagus nerve, which runs basically from our brainstem all the way down into our body, and it really regulates our body. And when we're in a place of safety, let's say Terry and I are having a great cup of coffee, a cup and saucer here in Brevard, and we're just having the connection and the insights, and we're laughing. We're in a place of safety. We feel safe, confident, and connected. We're in what's called a ventral vagus state because our vagus nerve, our ventral state, our front vagal nerve is regulating our body. Again, don't worry about the terms if they're too technical. Just know that in the place of safety, it's called a social state. We feel free to connect socially. I like to call it the three R's. We feel relaxed, rested, and regulated. Now, imagine that a tiger has escaped, just like the white squirrels of yore did so long ago. Somehow a tiger comes into cup and saucer. Immediately, our body, my body, Terry's body, is going to drop out of safety into fight or flight, a fight or flight mode. So any physical threat or an emotional threat, remember I said a difficult conversation. You might have to have a difficult conversation and you're not afraid of being, you know, gobbled by a tiger or eaten up by your dialogue partner, but there's an emotional threat that you feel like you might not survive. And so it sends you into this fight or flight response. We also call this a sympathetic state. A sympathetic state. I always remember S for survival. Our body goes into fight or flight so that we can survive. What's happening, if you want some of the science, it's the inhibition of our vagus nerve. And when we go into fight or flight, all sorts of stuff happens in our body. Cortisol, adrenaline goes up. Oxygen, heart rate goes up, oxygenation goes up. You felt this in your body, right? I'm sure many times. I felt it a few times today. I had to have a conversation with my wife that I was nervous about, and I went into a bit of a fight or flight state. It happens. And sometimes people will say, "Oh, what's wrong with me? Why am I so anxious?" It's like, no, nothing's wrong with you. Your body is responding perfectly to keep you safe. Now, we'll get to how sometimes we can uh, get stuck in fight or flight places and how to get out of that. But our body works beautifully to keep us safe. And the first thing I would say is one of the practices for us to live spiritual lives is to be really grateful for the wisdom of our body and how it keeps us safe, rather than judging it for being anxious. So we go into a fight or flight state. We do this because tigers in the coffee shop, we're either going to fight the tiger, probably not. Probably we're going to try to get out the door and flee from the tiger. But our body gives us all the resource we need to do that. Now, anything that sends us down the polyvagal ladder, we call a trigger. So anything that drops us from safety down into fight or flight, we call a trigger. That tiger is a trigger. He triggers a response in our body. Now, if you stay in fight or flight long enough, you've got cortisol coursing through your body. Let's say Terry and I get out of the coffee shop. We run down Main Street and we get away from the tiger. After a few moments, when we start to feel safe, our heart rate will go down. We'll start climbing back up the ladder towards safety. But let's say we stay in fight or flight for some reason. Let's say a bunch of tigers escaped, and so every corner there's a tiger, and we're running for miles and miles. At some point, the body's really good at fight or flight for short bursts. It's not great long term. We're not meant to stay in fight or flight too long. And eventually our body will drop further down the ladder into shutdown. I'm overwhelmed and I shut down. Now, again, that can happen because there's a physical threat like a tiger, but it can also happen because there's an emotional threat if you're in an abusive situation for too long. If you had a childhood where you were constantly feeling unsafe or unseen or unattended, your body can shut down, can drop into shutdown. Many people, most people, perhaps, live in a state called freeze. You see, it's between fight or flight or shutdown. Freeze state is, as it says here, a blend of fight or flight and shutdown. So if you can imagine a car and you get in the car and you hit the accelerator, but you also put the brake on, that's what it's like being in a freeze state. Your body is pendulating back and forth. Fight or flight, gas, shutdown, brake. It's the feeling of, oh, I've got to do something. I can't do it. And so a lot of the feelings of depression and hopelessness that people experience psychologically are actually rooted in neurobiological patterns or habits that have become acculturated in the body. So that feeling of, oh, I've got to do something to make life work. Oh, there's no point. And people can easily spend their lives just pendulating back and forth. Now, again, how and why is this helpful for our spirituality? Well, the goal of polyvagal theory ultimately is to learn to climb the ladder and get to this place of safety where we feel confident and connected and grounded. And if we can learn to do that, if we can get greater safety into our bodies versus feeling caught in a freeze or a chronic fight or flight or shutdown state, then we can experience greater joy, beauty, wisdom, compassion, kindness, spirituality. And so this gets really practical, actually. So much of transformational work is just learning how to feel safe in our bodies. There's, in polyvagal theory, a trigger is anything that sends you down the ladder. The good news is there's also something called a glimmer, which is the opposite of a trigger. A glimmer is anything that pushes your body back up towards safety. So a trigger is a cue of danger. There's a tiger. Oh, you got to have this difficult conversation. A glimmer is anything that cues your body with the feeling that you're safe and that you're going to be okay. So a containment hug like this, if you watch me just taking a deep breath, is actually can be a glimmer that sends your body into a place of safety. Anytime you make your exhale longer than your inhale, you're actually telling your body, I'm safe. Because we only take nice, long, deep breaths when we feel safe. So when you're feeling like you want to when your body's dropping into fight or flight, one way to push your body back towards safety is to just take a nice, long, deep breath. And again, you think about all the spiritual traditions that put this value on breathing, our breath, coming back to the breath, coming back to our body. So, when you got to have a difficult conversation, it's like there's all sorts of ways to get your body grounded through glimmers into a greater place of safety. Feeling your feet on the ground and feeling that tension between your body and the earth can be a glimmer that brings you to the present moment. Glimmer is really anything that gives you that sense of beauty and safety. When you see a beautiful sunrise, when you drink your tea in the morning, when you see the wind moving through the trees, these can all be glimmers. Now, with glimmer practice, the important thing is to train our bodies to slow down and actually experience the glimmer. Because many of us are rushing around so fast that we rush right through the glimmer. Robert Hansen, psychologist, uses this metaphor that our brain is Velcro for negative thoughts and Teflon for positive thoughts. So, we see a beautiful sunrise, kind of like, yeah, that's nice, but that doesn't have to do with my survival. And the main thing the brain wants to do is survive. That's the main imperative of the brain, survive. So we actually have to stop, or we don't have to, we get to look at the sunrise, take a few deep breaths. And it takes about 10 to 15 to 20 seconds for the gratitude or appreciation circuitry of the brain to really activate and really take in the glimmer. But the more you do that, the more you're training your body and your being to live and to seek out this place of safety. You can start a virtuous pattern and cycle of training your body to live in this place of safety. The more you do it, the easier it becomes to do that. So over time, you condition yourself to live higher and higher on the polyvagal ladder. Now, one thing I'll say about the polyvagal ladder is if you're in a place of shutdown, it would be lovely if you could just boop, pop right up here to the place of safety. But shutdown doesn't jump up right to the place of the social safety space. It has to pass through what? Fight or flight. This is why people, when they've been in a state of hopelessness or despair or even depression for a long period, the phrase, it gets worse before it gets better. Oftentimes this is part of the experience is, oh, now I'm feeling the emotions that I've been avoiding, and I'm feeling grief, and I'm feeling anger, and I feel like I want to lash out, and I feel chaos. It's like, oh, I want to return to this place of shutdown where everything was numbed out. That's because your body has to enter into fight or flight in order to push through to that place of safety. Now, I want to give an example of how polyvagal theory overlays with other ideas that are important for our bodies and our being and our spirituality. I want to talk about the idea of trauma. Trauma. Which trauma is when our body experiences a level of overwhelm. That's the sort of that's a kind of a global definition of trauma. It's when we feel like our resources are overwhelmed and we didn't have what it took to meet the challenge. So we drop down into fight or flight. We felt overwhelmed. We end up in a place of shutdown often when we experience trauma. In fact, almost always. Classic PTSD was you experience some sort of physical threat where you almost die, or you're afraid you're almost going to die, or you witness firsthand someone else almost dying or being overwhelmed. That's classic PTSD. Someone in a war scenario, for example. Now there's this recognition that actually it's not a binary. It's not you have trauma or you don't. To be human beings means that you're on a trauma spectrum. All of us have some level of trauma just by virtue of experiencing the pain and tragedy of the world. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score, has this great line: trauma is when we are not seen and known. Trauma is when we're not seen and known. And none of us are seen and known perfectly. All of us are on the trauma spectrum. Now, when there is acute trauma, what people call big T trauma, big T, assault, sexual or physical assault, um, or when there's little T trauma, which is the type of trauma where you're not worried about your physical safety, but some emotional resource in you is constantly put under pressure such that it causes the feeling of overwhelm. Often, what people experience in response to trauma is some form of disassociation. Again, like I said earlier, pushing down emotions, lack of feeling, numbness, lack of awareness of what's happening in our body. It can lead to either or thinking, right? Where we're sort of we don't know how to be in our bodies, and our thinking becomes degraded. So, um, when we experience trauma of this when we experience trauma, it often makes it unsafe to be in our bodies. And again, it throws us out of this place of safety and into fight or flight. When we've had a lot of trauma, or when we've had any trauma, it might create this anxious hypervigilance that feels like fight or flight, or it can put us down into shutdown mode. But we certainly don't experience trauma as a place of safety. So Peter Levine, who's one of my favorite trauma practitioners, he wrote a book called Waking the Tiger, and he uses this illustration of a tiger and an impala, which impala is like a an African deer. So let's say an impala and a tiger, an impala is walking through the savannah, and a tiger jumps out. Guess what? Just like what's going to happen to that impala's body, it's going to drop from this place of safety into immediate fight or flight, just like our body would. Impala has a limbic brain, an emotional brain, just like ours does. So it goes into fight or flight mode. And, uh, it might try to gore the tiger. More likely, it's going to try to flee and get away. Uh, if it can get away, it might drop into shutdown mode. Literally, the impala will just kind of drop into a state um, of, of shutdown and lie there. And this might fool the tiger into running off to get its cubs, and then maybe the impala will be able to jump up and get away. If the impala gets away in any of these circumstances, fight or flight or shutdown, the impala does something fascinating. When it's safe, the impala will shake its body out. Will stand and shake all of its muscles. It's like a computer rebooting. In fact, for us human beings, when we are dropping into fight or flight, one of the great things to do is to shake our body. To move our body in some sort of way that activates, that pushes back against the overwhelm. However, unlike an impala, we human beings, something different in our neurobiology, which is we have a neocortex. We have, more specifically, a prefrontal cortex. We have a thinking brain. And so what tends to happen for us is we tend to get stuck in thinking about a problem, trying to talk it out, um, ruminating on the issue. And as wonderful as thinking and naming is, it can get us it can work against us getting into that more visceral shaking response that actually allows us to discharge trauma. So our overthinking, which is rampant in our society, can actually be a type of disembodiment or disassociation. You can think about it when someone has been abused in some way, say physically abused, they often say, well, it's like I wasn't even in the room. I it's like I was watching myself third person. We have this ability as human beings to disassociate from our bodies. And we need to learn to come back to our bodies, but oftentimes we get stuck in our thinking, so we never are able to drop into our bodies. One of the ways to discharge trauma then is to embody the response you did not know how to embody at the time of the trauma, at the event. Your body is waiting for you to embody the response you didn't know how to embody at the time. So the impala does it through shaking. It resets its body to get its sense of agency back. How does a human being do it? Well, let's say you were bullied or you were abused in some manner, God forbid. What's needed in that moment, and there's no judgment. Let me finish this statement because I want to walk this all the way out. But what's needed in that moment is what I call hell no energy. Hell no energy. It's like, how dare you get away from me? No, it's this feeling that we are not going to be overwhelmed. However, usually when there's abuse, it's not safe to do that, and we intuit that. And so, a child, for example, who's being abused, they have no idea how to do that. There's no judgment that they don't do that. But life's not fair. That's actually what's needed. If it was safe for the child to do that, for someone being abused to do that. That's what their body is wanting to do. Of course, they don't know how to do that. And again, no judgment. But when we aren't able to activate that hell no energy, that resource, our body drifts into shutdown. And so what's needed as we get older is I actually need to get that hell no energy back into my body. So when it is safe, I can get that no, no, how dare you? I can get that anger, that energy back in my body. It's like shaking our body. So the best way to make it safe for our bodies to experience hell no energy is actually practicing glimmers. It's befriending the body. So when you read Peter Levine, who gives the example of the tiger and the impala, when you read how he talks about discharging trauma, he doesn't say, okay, you're going to talk about everything that happened at a deep level, and you're going to go, into the wilderness for 3 days and practice embodiment. No, he says, all right, here's what you're going to do. When you take a shower, you're going to let the water hit your shoulder, and you're going to feel it, and you're going to practice feeling it, and you're going to say, this is my shoulder. Or when you drink your tea, you're really going to drink your tea, and you're really going to practice tasting it. And you're going to lay on the floor, and you're going to feel what it feels like for the earth to be pulling you towards its center and for the floor to be pushing you up. And you're going to feel what that feels like. If I had been thinking, I would have, maybe we'll do this in the second half after our break. I'll have you do a little embodiment exercise just to practice being in your body. These things that, I tell my friends now, dude, I am so woo-woo, you would not believe. If myself 5 or 10 years ago could see myself now, I mean, I'm often up here shaking my body around and shaking out and I'm asking clients to go, and make noises with their body. And it feels real woo-woo, but I'm telling you, it works. Anything that helps us feel our body's experience works. I work with clients oftentimes who they have no idea what they feel because it's really sad. They had to disassociate from what they felt. Feeling was not safe. And the way into that is not now we're going to make you feel and tell all the stories. I mean, we have intense conversation and they tell intense stories, but the bedrock of the work is taking deep breaths, taking long walks, noticing what their body feels in minute ways that all those drops in the bucket over time actually fill the bucket. So the way to discharge trauma, the bedrock of it, the foundation of the work is actually to raise what Eugene Gendlin calls your felt sense, which is simply your felt sense is your awareness of what's happening in your body. Again, really, really tasting the tea, not just throwing it down and moving on to the next thing, really seeing the sunrise, not just saying, yeah, that's pretty and moving on. And so you see that we're right back to the polyvagal ladder. You see how important this ladder is for doing deep emotional work, deep psychological work, deep spiritual work. Trauma discharge is really rooted in learning to fill your life with as many glimmers as you possibly can. Fill your life with as many glimmers as you possibly can. On a practical level, that takes oftentimes learning to change our calendar and create more space for unhurriedness. It means to appreciate all the glimmers that we already have in our lives. It means loading our life with as much gratitude and appreciation as we possibly can. And over time, the more water you put in that bucket, it teaches your body to navigate shutdown, fight or flight, and to get to this place of safety. So, those are the basics of polyvagal theory. And again, I would assert that any spiritual life we want to live in this incarnation of existence has to do with being in a body and learning to be in a body. So this is a um, deeply spiritual practice to learn to come to our bodies. I got a couple of exercises we'll do after the break. But for now, Terry, why don't I hand it over to you and we can begin a conversation? Does that sound good? You're muted, Terry, if you're trying to talk.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. For how many of you is this mostly review? You have some experience? Maybe you can do your hand gesture you see under There's a react button. There's reactions. You can hold up a hand if you want, or you can just, yeah, thank you. So yeah, thank you. So for those that didn't raise a gesture, is this new? Yeah. I have an opportunity to hang out with Brandon on occasion, so this is not completely new, but I did learn something from this. Uh, I learned that's a real cute cat Debbie has just now. um, anything strike anything strike you? Some things struck me as Brandon went through those things in terms of uh, my own self assessment of how I embody or don't embody things. Anything about you?
Well, the ladder felt upside down to me. I would have had it in the opposite direction, that becoming more centered, I would be further down the ladder, calmer.
Closer to earth, more grounded, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I can understand that. And even, yeah, kind of turns the Maslow's hierarchy around, right? That you do get higher up the chain and on the Maslow's thing. So yeah, I, I went between those. A higher sense of self, is that perhaps Brandon what's playing there? You're closer to your best being when you're up the ladder, so to speak.
I think that's the idea. It's the sort of feeling of perhaps being above it all, right?
Yeah, being
That
above
these
it all.
earthly realities with all the pain is there, but we're able to transcend it. I guess that's the idea. I like yeah, there is sort of an inherent paradox in the latter in that we do activities to ground us to the earth, connect with the earth, uh, and yet it gives us altitude.
Right.
I guess for me, the latter was not a surprise, but the fact that dealing with trauma through our bodies is a surprise. Because I always thought it was about, boy, if I could just think this through, get myself in a better state of mind. But this is really interesting, new for me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and if I can just say a few words on that, if you look at the history of psychology in the 20th century, which I'm by no means an expert, but the 20th century really gave us this idea of talk therapy, starting with Freud, the talk cure, which largely became mid-century, developed into cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a very sort of talk-centered, you know, name why you're doing what you're doing, and then if you can name that, then you're going to figure out how to do things differently. You can change, if you can change your beliefs, you can change your behavior. There's value in all that. But what practitioners have come to in the last 10, 20, 30 years is this recognition of, very few people talk themselves into a cure. And talking is helpful, but it's usually not sufficient to actually discharge trauma from their bodies. So there's many studies on this, but veterans who get together and talk, helpful, but usually not sustained. But veterans who have experienced PTSD who learn to engage community and learn to engage some of somatic practices and feel their anger and feel their emotions through all sorts of different exercises. There's data that this is what leads them out of trauma back into having a regulated body. So across the board, there's this recognition now that talking was overrated, and we have to find ways for people to get grounded. Part of that is, if you go to an indigenous culture, they often have practices that are much closer to the earth. Dancing, shaking. I mean, you think about the Western Wall, in Israel, where you do this practice of moving your body. Most cultures have sort of intuitive, indigenous born practices for how to regulate our bodies. We Westerners tend to be more and more divorced from that because we live in a very heady culture. So, anyway, to your point, Susie, it is often surprising, but there's a growing and now sort of irrefutable body of evidence that demonstrates trauma discharge does not happen through talk alone.
Though, so is it? Can it? Doesn't it have to require? Does it require the mind? Does it? Does it? I mean, the mind is still indispensable, is it not? I speak from the head because I always act from the head, but right, just shaking. So I'm not an antelope, as you suggested. I have this thinking apparatus, right? And I want to process it through thinking. I appreciate that might not be enough, but that's still necessary, or
Still
not.
necessary. Yeah, it's still necessary. But if you think about it, like the safer you feel in your body, the more you're going to be able to have that conversation in a way that is actually transformative. So oftentimes we're trying to have these trauma conversations and actually our body is in a state of fight or flight. And so when your body is in fight or flight, it's real hard to think rationally to actually access the neocortex. So you're in your amygdala, you're in your limbic, you're in your emotional brain. So the more that you can get your body into a feeling of safety and calm, the more you're going to be able to effectively name why you're bothered, what needs to change, right? And we tend to get that in the opposite order. Just figure it out, talk about it. You don't really need to worry about your body. And actually what's needed is to get into your body, regulate your body, and then you're going to be way more effective at having
I understand.
a talking conversation.
That helped. Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
You just mentioned the word somatic.
Yeah.
That's I remember hearing it. I was very young when I first heard it. My older brother, 3 years older than me, was arguing with my dad that he was sick and didn't want to go to school, and threw out the word psychosomatic, that I'm sick not because I have a virus that the doctor can diagnose, but because I'm emotionally distraught. Don't you understand me, Dad? Kind of thing. And it didn't work. He still had to go to school that particular day. But that's when I first heard the term psychosomatic. And so I looked it up years later because I just remembered it just stuck in my head. Um, and help me with this, Brandon, but is it not the what you're describing? This polyvagal theory is very closely related to the way we um, hurt ourselves physically through our psychosis or our psychology.
Well, it can be that. So, somatic comes from the Greek word soma, which means body, versus psyche, which means mind or psychology, which we pronounce psyche. So, somatic has anything to do with the body. So, a somatic practice is anything that helps you be in your body, feel your body. Um, as to the the data on the psychosomatic effects of trauma, for example, are astounding. I'm thinking of Gabor Mate's book, The Myth of Normal, where he talks about he spends quite a bit of time saying, looking at the literature and the studies of what happens, for example, if you repress anger. So if you repress anger, the anger's coming out in some way and probably a way that you don't like, cancer or some disease. The correlation between unexpressed anger and cancer is correlates beyond chance. People who have to be overwhelmingly nice all the time. There's a high correlation of niceness, which has to do with suppressing what we really feel, with ALS. So repressed emotion in the body, no good. It's going to come out in some way that you don't like. High blood pressure, heart disease, et cetera, et cetera. And so, well, how does one express their anger that needs to come out? Well, there's somatic practices for that to help you. And it usually starts with, in gentle, safe ways, feeling what you feel in your core, in your gut, in your belly. So a somatic practice for discharging anger may not look like, beat the wall with your fist. It might be that if someone's ready for that, but it might start with, you're going to tap your belly and just notice what sensations you feel in your belly. It may start with, you're going to make some deep breathing noises and feel what it feels like to access your core energy. So yes, the connection between psychological health and learning to experience our body's feelings and emotions through somatic practices, there's a huge correlation between those two realities. But this is not supposed to be me talking. I had my say.
Hi, this is Joni. I don't know if you can see me. I can't see me.
No, we can't see you, Joni. That's
You can see
unfortunate.
everybody. It's a night of off cameras, which is fine, but we can't see
Okay.
you.
Well, as we're talking, my mind keeps going to more like, energy work, Reiki, balancing chakras, Qigong, just going to the gym when you first asked the question about where do we feel safe? Like
Mhm.
I feel safe in the gym because I know I'm doing gym work for my body.
Mhm.
So then keeping my body in shape makes, my brain work better and everything and feeling safe. So, and like you say, walking in the forest and being there. So a lot of what I'm feeling in the conversation right now is just being able to, you know, move energy in our body. And that's the idea of, like you say, like flapping your hands and screaming, getting away from um, the tiger or whatever.
Mhm.
So that's my input there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joni.
Yeah, very well said. I don't know much about Reiki. I mean, I'm familiar with the basics of Reiki and chakras. I'm not super versed in it. But yeah, anything that moves energy through your body. Yoga is phenomenal for helping people feel who've had suppressed emotion. Going to the gym, I love that. Absolutely. Cold bath, sauna, anything that gets you feeling what your body feels, even in extremes, can be really helpful for um, for teaching your body to live in a place of safety.
You mentioned the book The Body Keeps the Score, which I recommend everyone to read.
Great
Everyone.
book. Yeah,
It's an unbelievable book.
it is. Yeah, it's an incredible resource, and um, he gets into the second half of the book. He gets into so many different ways of practicing, um, of engaging somatic practices. It really is a wonderful resource. Susie, I see
You're
you
on mute, Susie.
muted.
Yeah,
The old mute button.
there you go.
I'm wondering how you work with children who get so overwhelmed. What physical
Mm.
suggestions you have for them?
Well, I am not a therapist or psychiatrist or a psychologist, so I would ethically, I don't know that I could give the answer to that. I don't work with children myself. Speaking of the body keeps a score, though, there's a lot of resources in there. They have oftentimes with children, there's theater work or improv work,
Mhm.
getting children to engage spontaneous responses that involve feeling what they feel. There's art therapy. Of course, there's somatic work like, you know, gymnastics, going to the gym. Um, so I would recommend I'd recommend you look at that book for a resource. And then, of course, there's so many wonderful resources on the web. But there's a lot of practitioners who work specifically with children, and that's a very, um, specific. Uh, there's different. Obviously they're very much the same practices, but there is some nuance to it, and I wouldn't be qualified to speak to that, I don't think.
Thank you.
Yeah. But it's all the rage, the gentle parenting movement. So much of what in my generation, I was born in 1980. There is this cultural awareness now of take a deep breath. Your lid is, your brain is flipped, your lid is flipped, you're in fight or flight mode, you can't think right now. That language wasn't there when I was being raised as a child, and I think now this is sort of making its way again across popular culture.
I recall a character it was in a book of fiction, but it was a cerebral palsy character who had very limited physical capabilities of movement and sort of things. And would this character would purposely uh, use his voice loudly and somewhat
Mm-hmm.
in rhythmic ways
Mm-hmm.
to calm himself down. He didn't have his body to work with, but he did have his voice to work with. And the way the author described what he was doing, the parents were confused about it and didn't know what to do. But the omnipotent writer of the story said this character was he didn't say finding God, but he said something similar to that.
Yeah.
It was his way of praying to find his center, to get calmed down. I guess in this case it would be to get up the ladder, polyvagal ladder. So if something upset him, it became a very rhythmic and loud approach to it because his body was so limited.
Yeah.
It's fascinating that I never connected. I mean, I didn't know the term polyvagal at the time, but I wonder if the author somehow had some insights as to embodying as any way you can. And the character was central to the other characters in the book. I got to remember what that was because it was really good because there wasn't much movement and dialogue obviously with this palsy person, but everybody was reflecting off him, off that person in different ways. And then of course the omnipotent writer was going through that mind all the way through it. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a great example. And
Yeah.
to Susie's point about children, I didn't mention that into the comment about body keeps a score. That's another thing. There's a section in the book that talks about rhythm in music.
Rhythm. Yeah.
You'll hear a lot about tapping these days. So tapping your body to regulate your body. So if you're feeling dysregulated, if you feel like you're dropping into fight or flight, tapping your body can just give you that sense of regulation, that you're safe in your body. So again, all this stuff that, can look pretty woo-woo, why are you tapping your body? But it gives people a sense of safety in their body. Music does that. Again, the wailing, the Western Wall, rhythmic davening, it's called, rhythmically
That
moving
makes
your body can give you that place of safety. And it can just get you to that place where you feel more resourced to deal with whatever it is you have to face. Debbie, what were you going to say?
When you asked the first question, where and when do you feel alive and safe? I have a practice of centering prayer meditation every morning, and I'm in and I had my group. I have in a Zoom group every Thursday, and I go to retreats that are a week long of silence and centering prayer, and that's where I feel it and have grown and have my thin places. And I just found another thin place last week. My granddaughter came for a week, and she's 26 now. She used to come up every summer, and I sent her to camp, and now she's a young adult. And we went to the Arboretum, and I said, this is a thin place. And as we walked through the gardens, we heard the frogs in the frog pond. I mean, you could hear them far away. And then we got up close, and they came to the side and came to, as we talked to them, it seemed like. And then their throats were blowing up, and then they were copulating. And it was just an amazing experience. And to experience it with my granddaughter was a wonderful experience. And we don't have a large house, that she used my bathroom every morning. And I was able to be sitting there, but then interact with her and not feel like, it was, I just enjoyed that time. And she was part of it, and she respected me. And it's as I age, it's my spiritual practice, and I'm able to go and grow further into my spiritual walk. And it's not in church, it's more so inside. And
It's
so
beautiful.
it's a great feeling.
That's awesome.
And
That's
if I don't do it, I feel very out balanced. And I mean, I do it every day. It's good.
So
That's
you're
some
you're
glorious glimmers right there.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's exactly what I was going to say, Janet. You're finding the glimmers, you're noticing, you're taking, you're pausing, you're celebrating the glimmers as much as possible.
Oh, yes,
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that.
yes. And
That's
go to the arboretum. The frogs are,
are they making some noise? That's good.
boy, far away. It's amazing. Yeah. So,
I love it.
thank you.
Beautiful, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love hearing people's glimmers because it just inspires me to get out there and
How
find my.
old's your granddaughter, Debbie?
She's 26
Okay, good.
and now in teaching middle school,
Oh my
reading
goodness.
kids that don't speak English. She's teaching reading to them, and has a boyfriend in Brazil. So she's been to Brazil many times,
Very
and
sweet.
she's just living her life that it warms my heart. She had a rough upbringing with her mother, who is my daughter, and you talked about the kids. She she eventually got diagnosed with bipolar, and but what got her through middle school and high school was swimming. We lived in Gainesville, Florida, and she swam at the University of Florida pool almost every day. And it gave her that release. And then
Right.
she got medicine and got diagnosed. And yeah, so it's having kids and experiencing them, and a difficult one. It's not always easy to find that channel to help them out, and they did turn out okay.
Yeah.
I have a tiny glimmer from tonight. I'm
What's that, Janet?
sipping, I'm sipping some red wine out of a beautiful cobalt blue carved crystal goblet. So I'm
Okay.
savoring the taste and the beauty and the feel of my beautiful glass.
Love it. Great example.
And it's at hand. That's the thing about glimmers. They are there if we choose. Right.
Mm.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for that, Janet. I see it's near the top of the hour. Perhaps it's a good time for a brief break, refill the glass. I'm going to have a cup of tea. That you mentioned the tea. I'm going to have a cup of tea. I'm going to make myself some tea here. Um, I got 7:58 on my clock here, so come back in about 7 minutes. That'd be 8:05.
Yeah, we're gonna do a couple of very simple exercises that I think will be helpful. We might be done early tonight, uh,
Okay, that's
as,
fine.
as well. But we'll get a couple of exercises in, have a little bit of conversation, and see if we can wrap it up a little early.
Sounds good. See y'all back in about 7 minutes.
See you soon.
All right, it's rolling.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. So, as promised, we're going to do two very simple exercises. I recently did a podcast that I called the 100 Glimmer Challenge, and the challenge was to come up with 100 glimmers that you can practice in a week. And the feedback that I've gotten is that this has been very helpful for people, and that they were surprised that they could actually come up with 100. But most people were able to. So I want to have you engage a simpler version of this. I'd like you to start by writing down 10 things that 10 glimmers that you currently engage or already practice, 10 of your favorite things. Somebody mentioned, red wine in a beautiful blue goblet. Perfect. Remember, a glimmer is anything that gives you a sense of calm, of unhurriedness, of beauty and safety. Sunrise tea. So, write down 10 of your favorite glimmers. We'll give it 90 seconds, say.
Yeah.
10 of your favorite glimmers. And if you get to 10, keep going. You don't have to stop at 10. You don't have to limit yourself to 10. See how many you can get down. Okay, let's have some fun. Let's hear some of these glimmers. Anybody who wants to share, would love to hear some of your favorite glimmers.
I know I share one, I think, with Debbie. Cats.
Yeah, yep.
Just, or any, if you're not a cat person, your dog or whatever, but petting an
Yes.
animal, just that's
Yeah.
a feel good, yes. And
Yeah,
I have a
pets made-
Zoom cat also. That's one of the reasons I'm turned off, because my cat loves to.
Jump in
Actually,
there.
she likes to moon the group, so it's like keep the video turned off because the cat will get right up here.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yep.
pets made my list. Pets made my list.
And there's a whole chemical cocktail that happens when we connect, the release of dopamine and oxytocin when we, share a moment with a beloved pet. All sorts of good chemical things happen. What
One
else?
of mine is cat in my lap.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got some cat people tonight. I like it. Judith?
Cat sitting next to me while I meditate.
Nice.
Soft, purring pussycat.
Love it.
grandkids in
Oh,
various situations, but just one big glob of grandkids are pretty special too.
Nice. Beautiful. Let's hear a few more. Joni?
Tree hugging. I love to hug trees.
Yep.
That first sip of coffee in the morning is just like, wonderful. It's like, you're alive and you're still here. I love full moons. I like to meditate. I like
Nice.
to laughing alone even. I wrote laughing alone and with friends because I like to laugh at myself.
Yep. Great.
Clean sheets.
Clean sheets
I love it.
from the clothesline even.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
must be
yes.
from the
Yeah.
clothesline.
Uh-huh.
Good.
And
Mara.
that first bite of key lime pie.
Oh, yes.
I see Mara with her hand up.
Oh, okay. I'm not used to the Zoom reaction, so I didn't know if anybody could tell I
Yeah.
turned my microphone on. So, pretty recent, I started listening to Claire de Lune while I'm eating my breakfast.
Man.
So, and the backstory is that I used to just come out, turn on the hot water, and turn on the TV for the morning news. I wanted to know what the weather was going to be like, and it was just the morning, and the news started becoming so miserable. I just realized what a horrible way to start every morning. I've been doing it for years, listening to the morning news, and the first thing they start off is how many people died and got shot, and everything. The market is down, just terrible. So I don't listen to the TV anymore in the morning. I listen to Claire de Lune.
Good for you.
Really
That's a
good
one.
naming.
That's a really good one.
Really good naming.
I don't watch TV very much either. Well, I don't at all, except on Sunday morning, my Sunday morning show.
Right.
Sunday morning, that just is my church, and the things that they share, I learn, and that's a glimmer.
Yeah.
I love sound baths, listening to running water,
Yes.
singing,
Same.
and silence. It's so noisy. I love
Yeah.
it.
And you find that at home?
Yeah, well, I live alone, so unless
Yeah.
I'm walking, it's pretty quiet around here.
Yeah, that's good.
So good. I love it. I love hearing people's glimmers. I'll just read a few of mine. Going out and looking at the moon at night, um, reading a children's book to my kids or to myself,
Good call. Good call.
looking at a photo book, reading a poem, getting in the sauna, watching the Andy Griffith Show. Not all TV, but the Andy Griffith Show does it for me. Listening to church bells, listening to bird song in the morning, smelling cologne or my wife's perfume, reading fiction, playing a game of chess, taking a hike. You get the idea. I mean, I love hearing people's glimmers because it inspires me. I love fresh sheets. I love that. Um,
Yeah.
I love I love hearing all the things that bring your body's joy.
I
And
want you to whistle us out with the Andrew Griffith theme later on tonight.
you
You got
got
to
it.
whistle us out, man.
You
You got
got
to
it. I'll
whistle
do it.
us out.
You got it. So the first part of this exercise is that if you can name these glimmers, my guess is you're going to become even more mindful of them and you can expand your experience and appreciation of them. So that's the first goal of this exercise is just to notice that these are glimmers and to not rush through them.
Could you clarify something, Brandon? You
Sure.
said the exercise was designed to identify 100 glimmers in a week's time.
Well, I'm giving you
Or,
a shortened
oh,
version
I
of
know
it.
you did, but was that what the exercise was? So,
100 glimmers that you could practice every week.
oh, that you could practice every week. I got
Yeah.
you.
I actually
That's
have
pretty cool.
42 on my list. So
That's pretty cool.
I know it can be done.
Yeah.
So let's practice. No, that's 10. Let's say you got 10. I'm just going to assume you got 10 down. Now watch this. I want you to write down 10 things that you are doing that you haven't thought of as a glimmer, but it actually could be a glimmer. I'll give you an example. Doing the dishes for me can either be drudgery or it can be something I'm really grateful to do because it slows me down, it gets me into rhythm, it gets me feeling the wetness of the water. Taking out the trash. When I take out the trash, I can actually take a moment and I can marry it to gratitude. Oh, I'm so grateful that I have this home and that I have a healthy body that can take out the trash. I'm going to be grateful for this as opposed to, and I got to do this chore. So there's a lot of things that that we may not have thought of as glimmers, but that they actually are glimmers. They're potential glimmers. Getting dressed in the morning and really appreciating the feeling of the fabric can be a glimmer. So I'd like you to write down 5 or 10 things that you could start relating to as a glimmer. Make sense?
Yeah.
5 to 10 things because our perspective and our attitude can change our experience instantly. So 5 to 10 things you're already doing that you could count, you could start relating to as glimmers. I'll give you another 90 seconds. Okay. Let's hear some of these. What'd you come up with? Whoever wants to share.
Making the bed.
Yep.
I had several with cleaning the kitchen counter, cleaning out the car, cleaning out the bird bath so the birds have fresh water,
Oh, yeah.
finishing a book,
Mm-hmm.
putting away laundry.
Good.
Good name.
Joni here. Pumping gas was the first thing that came to my head. I can't stand to pump gas, but I'm grateful I have the money to buy the gas and a card to take me places safely. I had a lot of cleaning issues as well. Cleaning, particularly the shower. I hate to clean showers.
Mhm.
And then with pollen season being right here, the dread of having to clean up all the pollen after it's over. And
Uh-huh.
then I feel like I'm constantly in the grocery store picking up something, but grateful I have the money to do that. But it becomes very annoying to feel like you're always having to go to the grocery for something.
Yeah. Good naming. Thank you. Who else? What else?
I wrote down walking from place to place, which I tend to do without being mindful at all.
Yep.
And paying attention to my body as I move.
Great naming. Yep.
Good naming. That's good, Judith. Mara?
Yeah, I live in Greenville and the traffic here is absolutely impossible. So I hated it for a long time and now I am grateful for the time that I spend sitting, not necessarily nudging along, but sometimes when I sit waiting for the light to change or someone to change lanes or something, I'm just looking around, I get to slow down and look around and not get mad at people. Today there was a traffic jam and by the time we moved up to it, there was a major accident that was stopping it. And I just felt so badly because it was really bad. And I felt really badly for the people there.
Yeah.
Grateful that they were there. They were all walking around and everything. So traffic can be a glimmer. So that's something bad turned to good. And the other thing I do and have been for a while, it's kind of a secondhand thing, is I'm grateful for the people who do things that I hate to do. So there's certain things that I just can't imagine doing for a living or doing on a regular daily basis. And I go, thank God. So you mentioned taking the trash out. Every time it's trash day, I'm so grateful for the people who get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and come and get my garbage and that stuff. And I just have to wheel it out to the curb. I just can't, they're great people. They're almost like the first responders too. So
Yeah, good. That's a good one.
so it's a kind of like a secondhand, I'm grateful for that. I'm not doing it, so it's not necessarily body oriented, except that I don't have to use my body.
Yeah.
That's really good, Mara. You really kind of described for me, if I could tag on to that, the social glimmers. Like you said, in traffic, there's people there. Okay, I'm just going to relax. I'm not going to honk my horn, those things. And that's really good. And being appreciative of the laborers that do stuff for us that we just take for granted. Yeah, those are good. Those are real human, not just personal, but relational. I like that one a lot. Thank you for sharing that.
How about one more?
I just thought of something. Oh, Susie, go ahead.
No.
Judith and Susie. We have time. Go ahead, Judith and Susie.
I just thought of something, and thank you, Mara, because when I live in downtown Brevard, and it's one of the things that I really love doing is waving to the trash guys. Saying hello to people like that. Smiling at cashiers, just to give people know that there's
That's right.
somebody who has a smile for them.
Yep, that's a good one.
Love it.
Spread the glimmers. Don't just look for the glimmers. Spread the glimmers. I like it, Judith. Yeah.
Good.
Susie?
And along that line, what most people think of a chore, I really love to do, and that's to write thank you notes. And I have a habit at the end of the day, before I go to bed, I think over the day, who has done something wonderful for me, or, where there's been a connection. And I just write like a 1 or 2 line text of thanks, and it makes me sleep better. But I do it for my job. I do it uh, in lots of contexts, and being in that a sense of awareness and gratitude just makes the world seem like a much nicer place.
I have to share one more glimmer,
Do
Brandon.
it.
I'm
Do
sorry.
it. Let's do it.
Because it's Susie, and I got to tell you why. Yep. She facilitated a discussion here in this kind of space for the movie project we have, Real Spirit Movie Project. She facilitated it. She did all the legwork to prepare for it and got me a 6 pack of a beer, my favorite beer, because she had the opportunity to do all that work. That's really, yeah. So instead of me getting her a bottle of wine, she got me a 6 pack of favorite beer, and that's pretty special. Thank you, Susie.
You did the work. I did the talking.
That's a great glimmer. That's a great glimmer. So, the point of this part of the exercise, the pumping gas that Joni mentioned in the grocery store. I don't have the source for it, but there was a professor who said, if we weren't numb to the world around us, if we could really see with pure eyes, the experience of going to the grocery store would absolutely floor us with awe and wonder. The experience of getting on a plane and flying through the air is a miracle. I mean, if people throughout history could see what we do, getting in a car and riding around, it's a miracle. People would their jaws would drop if they could see what we take for granted, or if they could see what we experience and take for granted. And so, to restore this sense that everything is who was it? Shelley who said the earth is, or Hopkins, the earth is charged with the grandeur of God, or the glory of God, something like that. It's like everything around us is soaked with wonder, but we lose the ability to see it. Practicing glimmers, it it starts to restore that magic to the world, that imagination. And I also like this part of the exercise because it shows us that how easily we can reframe our experience. The agency and the power we have to say whether something is drudgery or it's something we're grateful for. Cleaning our counter, our kitchen counters. That can be sort of, I got to clean my counters, or going to the grocery store, or it can be glimmer, it can be magic. So we have a lot more say in our experience than sometimes we think that we do. I want to end the exercise with this piece. What's something that you would like to start doing? So, a glimmer that you know is a glimmer, but for whatever reason you don't regularly engage it, but you might like to start engaging it. Going to the arboretum might has been suggested, right? But what are some glimmers that you'd really like to add to your life, to your daily or weekly practice? So try to come up with 5, maybe 10 things that you'd like to start doing. All right, we'll take another 90 seconds. Begin. What practices, what glimmer engagement would you like to begin? Okay, let's hear some of these. Some potential glimmers just waiting to be had. What you got?
I would love to see exercise with a glimmer of gratitude.
Awesome. Great. Beautiful. What else?
I want to start listening to music instead of watching the news.
Perfect. Love it. Beautiful. What else?
I have a
Right,
tendency,
that.
I have,
Go ahead.
I have a
Go,
tendency
Judith.
to go from point A to point B when I'm driving. And I know I miss a lot because I don't wander. And I'd like to give myself permission to get lost.
Yes. Beautiful.
Hmm.
That old Sunday drive. That's one of my glimmers, actually. It's Sunday drive, and I have Sunday in quotes because it means just drive, just get lost. I love that.
Mara.
So I just want to say I have a little problem with this question because once I started thinking, it turned into a to-do list. Now I'm thinking, so I have a to-do list of all the things I would love to do that I haven't done for months, years, or whatever, because something else takes its place. And I don't want glimmers to be to-do lists. What I understand about glimmers is that they're short. There's something fleeting that you kind of can lift you in the moment, but not an activity. I mean, because that's what I was thinking. Oh, I was going to take this class and blah, blah, and then I went, no, that's not. So if you'd like to, I don't know if you can differentiate or if it's necessary to do so for a glimmer or a to-do.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, obviously, if there's drudgery involved, then it's ceases to be a glimmer. If it feels like if it feels like I have to and not a get to, then it ceases to bring that sense of safety. In terms of the endurance, I think a lot of glimmers are sort of uh, they can have that sort of micro quality to it, the really tasting your coffee. But I don't know, you go to a concert that might last 2 or 3 hours, that whole thing can be a glimmer. An entire day can be a glimmer. So I don't think that they're limited by, they don't have to be short. Short is obviously a relative term, but they don't have to be short in duration. A class could be a glimmer. You mentioned doing a class. Um,
Painting a painting, writing a song.
yeah,
Those
right.
could take time. That's yeah, right.
Yeah. In fact, that's so another way to think about glimmers is they tend to get us in the right side of our brain, which is the part of our brain that has a capacity to get in the moment and transcend it. They call this a flow state. And often, if you're drawing, it might take 10 minutes, or you're writing, it might take 10, 20 minutes to get into that flow state. So the writing may at first feel like drudgery, but then as you focus, your brain switches modalities, gets into that flow state, and all of a sudden it becomes a glimmer. So, some glimmers you have to work for. You do have to kind of dig them out of the mud, as it were. But I think your naming of, yeah, none of this needs to be a burden or I've got to, because that defeats the purpose.
Ed.
Hey, Terry.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, Edward.
I'd like to find some golfers around Transylvania County, but I like golf. I played in a golf league when I worked at a company up in New York, and I like to do sports. And what's that?
It's a good game. Not for me, but it's a good game for that.
Well, maybe I need to look harder because you're out in the woods. There's a whole lot of body engagement, and you kind of get in the flow. I've kind of talked to one of the participants about, went out of town and played ping pong with my brother-in-law, who was like the state champ of Vermont, and it was good. So I like those kind of body sports that you get into flow, and it's not about. But I'm good at golf, but if you forget you're good at it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So,
hit me up. Maybe we can play some pickleball.
that was on my maybe to-do list.
I've been habituating that in recent weeks, and it's good. It's fun. It's social, and it definitely takes my mind and body somewhere else. So it probably would for you too, Ed. Yeah.
Just don't fall over. That's the key.
Yeah.
Always. Golf's a great glimmer practice because it really slows you down, and it can get you into that flow state.
Yeah.
Okay, so the point of this this part of the exercise is just to again see that sense of agency that we have, that we can really transform our experience by seeing everything as an opportunity to really experience life and get off automatic. I love, Judith, Judith, what you shared about getting lost, giving yourself permission to get lost. Yes, because we get so left brain on task, get it done. Those wide open spaces where we're not accomplishing anything, but we're experiencing. Yes. How much of spiritual life is that? Just experiencing. So we're going to close our time in just a moment with a very simple embodiment exercise. Any other thoughts? Any questions, Susie? I know you had a couple of things you wanted to chime in on, but let's have a few more moments just for open sharing or questions.
Hey, Brandon,
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
please hit.
can a glimmer moment be when you cry watching Andy Griffith and Opie having a father-son moment?
Absolutely.
Can crying be a glimmer moment? I think it is.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'm serious. When you feel love or connection,
Absolutely.
Well, that's like the
maybe
ultimate
I'm,
glimmer. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you move to Tears by Beauty, that's the ultimate glimmer. Yep. And
Angela,
definitely Andy Griffith.
Angela?
Yeah, so I just, one thing that came to my mind is in the years of learning to practice having a Sabbath day,
Hmm.
my one criteria is that I don't do anything that I attach to my to-do list or I feel a compulsion to do, that I need to get this done today. But it's really just moving through the day, sometimes doing nothing, but it doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing something that gives me a sense of fulfillment and peace and connectedness. And it's an interesting exercise just to pick a day a week to go through that intentionally, not because it needs to be done, it has to be done, just because it will give me joy to do it. And
Yeah.
I found that to be a wonderful discipline through the years.
It sounds wonderful. And I wonder, I remember a recent presentation on the Sabbath at church I go to, St. Philip's, where it was on the rhythm of 6 days and then a day of rest. And I was just wondering, could that be done in hours? Right. So make sure you tuck away an hour a day to say, I'm not thinking about this. I'm not thinking about that. I'm going to do, just move it over here. I don't know, maybe by minutes. Some days that maybe should time it out at minutes, but yeah.
I think all of these terms are ways of thinking about being in the moment
Being
and
in the moment.
being in the moment and being fully in the moment, mind, body, and spirit together. And sometimes it can last for a moment, sometimes it can last for hours, sometimes it can actually last for the whole day. But it's like any other discipline. You have to keep doing it and practicing it so that you get better at it and so that it can happen more easily. And one other thing I'll just share with you because I've done a lot of work through the years over the vagus nerve, and when I'm really needing to reset my vagus system, the most effective thing to do is to fill up the kitchen sink with ice water and duck my head in it. And it works. It works. You may feel that ice cream freeze for a moment, but it will reset the nerve and you'll be surprised then at how calm you are. So that's my tip for the day.
Thank you.
That's a good one. Yep. Yeah, I love the language of no compulsion. Anything that feels like I have to, anything that feels compulsive. And then a lot of this comes down to, your personal temperament and personality. I found for me, Saturday morning, I need an adventure. I need to go do something. I need to go hiking or antiquing or go to Biltmore. I need to go do something that gets my brain in a completely different, out of the flow of quote unquote normal life. You know, some people, their Saturday morning, the glimmer would be staying at home and getting a bunch of errands. It's like knowing yourself and knowing your personality is a huge dynamic in all this. Susie, did you want to ask your questions?
They're really based on the reading and not on this conversation. So maybe I'll ask you another time.
Okay,
Thanks.
sure. Any other thoughts, considerations, ruminations? I'm gonna have to go dip my head in the sink sometime this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I'm going to do that one.
I usually dip my body, but my head, that'll be a new, that'll be a new experience.
Like your
Or
whole head, Angela, or just your face?
ooh,
Just your face, I guess.
Well, if you get from here up
I
in
got you. I see.
water, it will make a difference. But Brandon was just saying that once this winter I was going through this kitchen renovation, I was having a major meltdown. So I was walking down to the French Broad River, and it was a pretty cool day. But I thought, I'm not going to stick my head in this water, but I could take my shoes off and just walk out in this water, and it was cold, baby. I mean, it was cold. But it reset my vagus nerve.
It's
I
good.
bet it did.
Angela,
Yes,
I miss my glimmer moments with Max. And I'm serious.
my dog. Yeah,
Your dog. Yeah.
quite an entertainer.
I have this little thing called a sensate, which is it syncs up with your phone and it vibrates and it's meant to calm your vagus nerve. I don't know how effectively it works.
You wear it?
You wear it around your neck and it vibrates
Oh,
in tune with this music that you're listening to in your earphones. And the idea is that it's your vagus nerve runs a little bit right of or I think right of center. So anyway, the idea is that it kind of vibrates through your
interesting.
ears and calms your body. So
Interesting.
that may be snake oil, but who knows?
Well, our cat just curled up in my lap and is purring, so
Glimmer.
I think that's a fitting end to my evening.
It's a good glimmer. Yeah, so if you there's different practices too for when your body's in fight or flight or when it's in dors shutdown or what's called dorsal vagal shutdown. And when you're in fight or flight, it's good to find uh, activities that help you process the fight or flight. So again, shaking can help restore a sense of body, pushing your body against the wall and really pushing your energy into the wall. Um, when you're in a shutdown state, it tends to be calmer practices that start lifting your body but not get you moving too fast. So again, this is called a butterfly hug and taking deep breaths from here. This is called a containment hug. So my point is that there's a whole sort of science around what kind of exercises to engage based on where you're at in the polyvagal ladder. And I would suggest following Sarah Jackson on her Instagram. She's got a lot of really helpful videos for, hey, here's something to do when you're feeling this. Here's something to do when you're feeling this. So a lot of it's experimentation in terms of what works for you. I thought we would end tonight with just a very, very simple embodiment practice. And so I'm going to ask you can turn your camera off if you feel more comfortable. I'm going to leave mine on, but I want you to just close your eyes. Take a few nice deep breaths. Nice long exhales. Make your exhale nice and long, much longer than your inhale. And just notice if that even creates a sense of rest or relaxation in your body. You're actually triggering your parasympathetic nervous system, not your survival system, not your fight, but that parasympathetic that pushes you up towards the ladder, up towards safety. So often when we breathe, we feel of calm come into our body. Or when we practice gratitude, it can create a sense of calm and safety in our body. Now, just continuing to breathe, I want you to just pay attention to your body for a moment. You take your hands in front of you and just rub them together and notice the sensation of your hands rubbing together. Notice that friction. And then just making it very light, just feeling the connection between your fingertips as you just very lightly rub your fingertips slowly together. Then resting your hands in your lap, I want you to feel where your body is hitting your chair. Feel that tension of the weight of the gravity pulling your body down, and yet you're being supported by a chair. Feel that sense of tension that we're always in as human beings. We're always in some sort of tension. Feel this bodily tension that you're in. And then shifting your attention from your chair, bring your awareness to your core, your belly, your gut, and notice what sensations you feel there. Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel tension? Do you feel open? Do you feel closed? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel peace? Just notice the minute sensations. It may feel like electricity in your belly, or it may feel like numbness. There's nothing you're supposed to feel. Just notice what you do feel as you pay attention. And without slouching, I'd like you to relax your shoulders. And relax the muscles in your chest. Taking a nice long deep breath. And relax the muscles in your face. Relaxing your cheek and your jaw. Then placing one hand over your heart, take a nice long deep breath. Nice long exhale. Then open your eyes. So that is a very simple calming practice. It's just a drop in the bucket, but if you put enough drops in the bucket, you'll raise your felt sense, your awareness of what's happening in your body, and you'll get acclimated to this is where I want to be. I want to be safe in my body. So again, we can train ourselves towards that place of safety, towards that place of beauty. And the spiritual life is grounded on learning to be in our body, learning to be present in the present moment. Every great spiritual tradition has this current of learning to be here now. I think of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to take care of itself. You look at the lilies of the field, look at the grass, look at the birds of the air. In other words, just see what's right in front of you and learn to be present with that. That's where God is. That's where our spiritual life flows. So, want to thank you for being here. Terry and I are really grateful for this work that we get to do. We're grateful for the Center for Spiritual Wisdom. You can find out about offerings coming out through the center, through the website. Join the email list. Terry, is there anything you want to shout out now? You're muted.
Yes, thank you, Brandon. And thank everyone for bringing a glimmering spirit to the session tonight. It was really sweet. Yeah, just a couple things to share. Upcoming events here at the center or here in Zoom. Should be seeing my PowerPoint all right. So coming up in April, one film, but two events. The film is called A Case for Love, a documentary that is definitely makes a case and asks some good questions about can love save the world, right? And what's the answer if it can't? Is certainly the alternative there. So it's a wonderful documentary. And again, there's a live event at the Co-Ed Cinema in Brevard on Monday, April 14th. No admission required. Please register though, so we can manage the attendance. And you can do so at the center's website under programs. And after that screening, there's going to be a brief gathering across the street for some discussion. And then later in the week on the normal programming date on Thursday, April 17th, the Real Spirit Movie Project will be also discussing the film. You don't have to go to the live screening to see the film. It's available on streaming platforms. So if you're not available to come to the live screening, which I hope you can, but if you can't, you can also stream it on various sources and then come to the Thursday night discussion where we'll have we'll make that case for love at that time. So again, 1 film, 2 events in April. And then the next in May, in this series, A Little About a Lot, we're going to take up the issue, whoops, sorry about that. Take up the issue of Big Bird. It could be in trouble. The future of Sesame Street. It's currently available on HBO, or otherwise it's called Max now, but Max is going to end the Sesame Street programming, and they do not have a broadcast partner. So that's the dilemma. But the history of Sesame Street is rich. It crosses cultural, social bounds. And of course, it's a children's education program as well, near and dear to many people's hearts. Dr. Abby Whitaker is a professor of history at Brevard College. She just completed her first year at Brevard College. Her doctoral thesis was on the history of Sesame Street, so she knows quite a bit about this. And look forward to a rich discussion here. It talks about lots of things regarding what we do with educational opportunities for children, public funding versus private funding, all sorts of things, as well as the existential crisis that the program is under as it speaks. So tune in for that one in May 15th, the 3rd Thursday of that month. So again, thank you everyone for bringing the glimmering spirit with you tonight. As usual, this is a rich place. Brandon, can't thank you enough for setting such a good table, having us all dine sumptuously from it. So
And I'd like to add thank you for everybody who made donations this evening. Thank you very much. Very appreciated.
thanks, Cindy, for co-hosting and tending the recording so well. Any final
Thank you
thoughts,
all.
words? Yep. Thanks, Susie.
Thank you all. Good to be with you.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thanks,
See you
everybody.
next time.
Will there be popcorn for sale at the movie theater?
Yes, there will be popcorn for sale.